Coming up on this Friday edition of NEWSLINE at noon, South Korea is set to buy scores of Patriot Advanced Capability-3 or PAC-3 missiles from the United States. They'll make up a key part of South Korea's own missile defense system. President Park Geun-hye will soon embark on a 9-day trip to China, Myanmar and Australia to attend this year's APEC, ASEAN+3 and G20 summits. Fast joining global efforts to contain Ebola, Korea will send its first group of medical workers to Sierra Leone next Thursday. These stories and more on NEWSLINE at noon.
It's noon Friday, November 7th here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in live from Seoul. I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
It's very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this afternoon. South Korea has taken yet another step closer to upgrading its missile defense system, with the U.S. State Department approving the sale of well over 100 interceptor missiles to Seoul.
The upgrade is part of the South Korean military's plans to develop its defense system so it can stand up to North Korean threats without the need for outside help. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
The U.S. government has given the green light to the possible sale of PAC-3 interceptor missiles and related equipment to South Korea. The U.S. Defense Security Cooperation Agency says the State Department has approved South Korea's request to sell 136 PAC-3 missiles to Korea at an estimated cost of $1.4 billion. That request has now been passed on to the U.S. Congress, who will decide whether to approve it. South Korea wants the PAC-3 missiles to upgrade its present PAC-2 air defense system by 2020 to better defend against threats from North Korea. The PAC-3, a low-tier missile that can hit a ballistic missile up to 40 kilometers in the air, is viewed as essential for Seoul's plan to build up its Korea air and missile defense system. The missile is more accurate and efficient, as they're designed to make a direct impact on an enemy warhead, whereas the PAC-2 explodes near the target. The U.S. Defense Secretary Cooperation Agency says the upgrade would not only provide South Korea with greater capabilities, but would also decrease the Korean military's reliance on U.S. combat forces. That is viewed as being crucial for the successful transfer of wartime operation control from Washington to Seoul, which was recently delayed until sometime in the mid-2020s. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
The global community is taking action to address North Korea's widely documented human rights abuses. The European Union on Thursday briefed the UN General Assembly Committee on a resolution they presented last month together with Japan, urging the Security Council to refer Pyongyang to the International Criminal Court. The EU representative, Italian Councillor Emilia Gatto, told the committee that they are deeply concerned about systematic rights abuses in the north, adding the world can no longer ignore the suffering of North Korean people. The resolution, co-sponsored by some 40 countries, calls for a probe based on the findings of a UN inquiry. A committee vote is expected later this month before the measure goes to the full assembly in December. And it has emerged that North Korea told a former American detainee to ask for a visit by an ex-U.S. president for his release. In an interview with Voice of America, Jeffrey Fowl, the American who was detained in North Korea for 6 months, said Pyongyang officials wanted a high-level U.S. envoy to intervene. Mr. Fowl said he was asked to make the request and describe his desperate situation when he talked to American media outlets CNN and the Associated Press during his captivity. This 56-year-old entered North Korea on a tourist visa early this month and was arrested for leaving a Bible in a nightclub bathroom. He was freed last month, but 2 Americans are still being held by the North. The mystery surrounding the death of a Japanese national kidnapped by North Korea in the 1970s may have been solved. Using the accounts of North Koreans with knowledge of Megumi Yokota's fate as evidence, a local newspaper says she was poisoned and buried in North Korea's hills some 20 years ago. Hwang Seung-hee has the details.
Megumi Yokota, who has become a symbol of Japanese nationals abducted by North Korea, may have been poisoned. South Korea's Donghwa-ilbo newspaper reported Friday that Yokota had been locked up in a psychiatric facility in Pyongyang, where she was force-fed sleeping pills and given shots, which led to her death either from poisoning or overdose in 1994. That's the same year North Korea claims Yokota committed suicide. The newspaper cites a joint investigative report by the Japanese government and South Korea's separated abductee families group that met in September with 2 North Koreans who worked at the asylum. The North Korean workers recalled seeing blue spots all over Yokota's body, evidence that she was either poisoned or given excessive pills, and said she was buried along with 5 others under the orders of the North Korean regime. That could explain why remains returned by North Korea in 2004 that were supposed to be of Yokota did not match her DNA. Yokota was taken by North Korean agents on her way home from school in 1977 when she was 13 years old. Her story is the most high-profile abduction case, but Tokyo officially recognizes 17 victims and believes more than 800 people were kidnapped with North Korean involvement. Japan and North Korea agreed to reopen an investigation into the fates of the Japanese abductees in July. A first report on the probe was expected in late August, but North Korea has not submitted one yet. The latest findings, if proven true, are bound to cause friction in the ongoing negotiations. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye will embark on a 9-day trip to China, Myanmar and Australia on Sunday to take part in 3 major multilateral gatherings, namely the APEC, ASEAN+3 and G20 summits. Throughout her tour, President Park is expected to try and drum up support for her economic and security initiatives. Chae Sun reports.
President Park Geun-hye will open her trip on Monday at the 2014 APEC Leaders Summit in Beijing at the forum's Business Advisory Council. There, the Korean president will introduce her administration's efforts to spur domestic growth and expand the job market through social reforms, deregulation, and supporting creative industries, often dubbed the 3-year Economic Innovation Plan. At the Leaders Summit, President Park will discuss a new growth engine for the global economic recovery and ways to better integrate member economies. She's also scheduled for bilateral talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping, where much attention will be focused on the progress of FTA negotiations. President Park will then travel to Myanmar for the ASEAN+3 summit and the East Asia Summit. Here, she will urge for greater regional cooperation to counter the Ebola outbreak and the threats posed by Islamic State militants in the Middle East. The Korean president will also have a chance to promote her North Korea-related policies and to boost ties with the ASEAN. For the final leg of her trip, President Park will travel to Brisbane, Australia for this year's G20 summit, where she will again speak about her economic innovation plan as an initiative to address the global problems of low growth and high unemployment. The Korean president will also meet the Saudi Crown Prince to seek out more opportunities for Korean firms to invest in the Arab country's infrastructure construction. Promoting her administration's economic and security policies to world leaders, President Park hopes to highlight Korea's contributions to global security and prosperity, thereby further cementing its status as a major middle power. Choi Yu-sun, Arirang News.
Now, millions of dollars have already been donated, but Korea is about to physically join the global war on Ebola with actual feet on the ground in one of the hardest hit countries. The government says a ministerial advance team will travel to Sierra Leone next week to make the necessary arrangements for trips by more medical teams over the next couple of months. Kwon So-ah reports.
As announced last month, Korea is joining in the global fight against Ebola by taking the next step in sending its own medical personnel to West Africa. Seoul's defense ministry says it will send an advanced support team to Ebola-stricken Sierra Leone for 9 days starting next Thursday. The team, which includes 11 officials from the defense, health and foreign ministries, will first make a stop in Britain to prepare for the review along with British staff. Sierra Leone is one of the 3 hardest hit countries, along with Liberia and Guinea. Latest data from the World Health Organization shows around 1,500 people have died of the virus in Sierra Leone. And while this is much lower than Liberia's death toll, the number of patients in Sierra Leone is alarmingly high. According to the Africa Governance Initiative, an African leaders supporting organization, at the end of October, the number of new daily cases in and around Sierra Leone's capital of Freetown had jumped to 12, 9 times higher than the 1.3 cases reported per day in early September. The AGI said that while the outbreak seems to have slowed in Liberia, it's still spreading very fast in Sierra Leone. A big concern for the Korean personnel is that 5 doctors in the country have already died after contracting Ebola. Despite those worries, volunteers from Korea are eager to help in any way they can, with the number of applications to travel to West Africa outstripping expectations. After the first team completes its safety checkups, further groups made up of military, health, and other civil specialists will be sent to the region through the end of January. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Now, after months of discussions and heated disputes that have brought parliamentary affairs to a grinding halt, lawmakers appear set to finally pass 3 special bills this Friday related to April's Sewol ferry disaster. It represents a minor victory for the victims' families, who may now finally get some answers to the many questions surrounding the events that led up to this awful disaster. Our Ji Myung-gil reports.
3 special bills, all related to April's ferry disaster, are nearing parliamentary approval. First among them is the Sewol ferry bill, which will launch a special investigative committee composed of 17 members who will work for 18 months to find out what caused April's disaster that left more than 300 people dead or missing. A special prosecutor will also be appointed to investigate and indict those found responsible for the tragedy. The second bill, also related to the Sewol ferry disaster, is called the Yubyong-won Law, after the de facto owner of the sunken ferry. It would give the government more authority to go after and confiscate wealth that is illegally accumulated by members of a family. In relation to the Sewol ferry disaster, the law would give the government the legal grounds to confiscate the assets of Yu Byung-won and those related to him. The third bill is the revised Government Organization Act, which would set up a new ministry under the Prime Minister's office to deal with disaster and safety management. Under the new ministry, 2 sub-level agencies would be established to oversee the Korea Coast Guard and the National Emergency Management Agency. Once the 3 bills are passed at Friday's plenary session, the 2 rival parties will finally be able to put their months-long battle over the special bills to rest and turn their full focus toward reviewing next year's budget. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
Stay up to date on the latest news out of Korea. Connecting to our team of reporters about the issues that matter to Korea. On air, on your mobile, online. Find out more about Korea on NEWSLINE at Noon with Mark Broome and Eoh Jin-joo.
I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
Market researcher, strategy analytics, said Thursday that LG Electronics brought in about...
The OECD has revised down Korea's growth outlook for next year and is calling for more flexible monetary and fiscal policies, as well as structural reforms that support the specific needs of respective countries. Kim Min-ji reports.
The OECD says it expects the Korean economy to grow 3.8% in 2015. The research body on Thursday released a preliminary forecast for major economies ahead of the G20 summit set to open next week in Brisbane. The projection is 0.4 percentage points lower than its previous forecast made in May and slightly under the Korean government's forecast of 4%. However, the OECD expects Korea to grow 4.1% in 2016. For the global economy, the OECD also revised down its forecast by 0.1 percentage point to 3.3% this year.
Unfortunately, growth rates continue to disappoint. Once again, we've marked down global growth.
But the OECD does expect the global economy to accelerate to 3.7% next year and 3.9% in 2016. Meanwhile, the organization says the recovery remains robust in the U.S., projecting growth of more than 3% for 2015. This is in contrast to the Eurozone, which is expected to pick up slowly from 0.8% this year to 1.1% next year. As for China, the world's second-largest economy, the OECD estimated growth would slow from 7.3% this year to fall into the 6% range in 2016. Citing downside risks such as threats of a prolonged stagnation in the euro area, market volatility, and high levels of debt in some advanced and emerging economies, the OECD stressed the need for monetary, fiscal, and structural policies. It added that reforms to tax, trade, labor, and product markets will benefit domestic investment and global trade and support greater employment around the world. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, the ratification of free trade agreements with Australia and Canada are set to get the green light by Parliament in the coming weeks, and representatives from Korea's ruling and opposition parties, as well as government officials, will gather at the National Assembly this Friday to find ways to soften the blow on the country's agricultural and livestock sectors. The ruling Saenuri Party's Policy Planning Committee Chairman Chu Ho-young and Paek Jae-hyun from the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy will be taking part in today's meeting. They'll be joined by officials from various assembly committees and government ministers.
The International Telecommunication Union meeting in Busan wraps up on this Friday after a very successful three-week run. One event is still running on the sidelines, however. That is the Science and Creativity Festival, and it's packed full with hands-on and very exciting ways for young minds to think outside the box. Our Connie Kim filed this report from Busan.
You can see it, try it, and feel it. It's ICT, Information and Communications Technology, combined with science technology, which has become a vital part of our daily lives. Smart classrooms seek to provide education to students all over the world. This can be seen in one of the smart classrooms that Korea is seeking to make available all over the world. Be it in disaster-affected regions or in rural communities, this container-reformed smart classroom can charge itself through solar panels on the roof. This smartboard, for example, asks students to draw lines on the board to make the same four shapes. Now, by sending the same screen to students via their tablet PC textbooks, everyone gets an opportunity to try it out. In addition to the smart technology, students during the Korea Science and Creativity Festival were also able to engage in experiments and activities that came together under the umbrella of science and IT.
Snowboarding combined with science was such an amazing experience. I would like to see more of these.
For the exhibitors, they say it's an opportunity to meet people and promote their newest technology.
A lot of students seem to be amazed when they see 3D printers. By showing people how objects get printed in 3D, it's an opportunity to promote them.
It's these science technologies that the Science Ministry believes are going to be the growth engines of Korea's economy. During the annual Science and Creativity Festival held on the sidelines of the ITU Plenipotentiary Conference, hundreds of schools, institutions, and companies have laid out some 400 creative programs that may become a part of our everyday lives in the very near future. Connie Kim, Arirang News, Busan.
And staying with technology news, e-book firms are firmly trying to take advantage of Korean consumers' insatiable desire for all things that are mobile-based. Park Geun-hye shows us some of the latest trends in the nation's education e-book market.
Beaver and Red Boots is a children's e-book that boasts diverse interactive features like animations, pop-up images, and other visual effects. The book's adorable characters and detailed interactive tools earned the e-book this year's Best Digital Publishing Award from the Culture Ministry.
We have focused on less flashy features and more on creating interactive features that help children develop their abilities to think and comprehend the story.
This is a children's ebook on the solar system. Thanks to the graphics and interactive features, children are taught complicated scientific concepts like what causes tides and how the moon's shadow creates solar eclipses. Then what about this driver's guidebook that features a direct link to a Google map so that readers can spot a recommended location and drive to the spot? Just as these digital books show, ebooks are no longer reserved to being replicas of their printed versions. Executive Director of the International Digital Publishing Forum, Bill McCoy, says digital contents of today should be called digital natives.
I think that digital natives, the younger generation who's growing up with digital devices, they're going to expect the content on those devices to be native for the digital platform, not just the replica of paper anymore.
McCoy says education is an area in which ebooks will grow rapidly over the next 5 years. In Korea, however, the digital book market is still in its infancy. It accounted for just about 2% of the total publishing market last year, far below the global average of some 13%, leaving much room for growth. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Well, it's time now for a look through the global headlines we're following on this Friday lunchtime here in Seoul. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim, standing by at the News Center.
Eunice, let's begin in Washington, where it remains to be seen what kind of collaboration we'll see between the new Republican-dominated Congress and the White House. Both sides had vowed to work together, but so far it doesn't look that promising.
No, it doesn't, Jin-joo. Judging by the public comments being thrown back and forth, we are now hearing from Republican House Speaker John Boehner, who has warned U.S. President Barack Obama against, quote, poisoning the well, to borrow some of his words, in a reaction to the president's promise to push through immigration reform via executive action by the end of this year. Boehner countered by saying that the Republican agenda for next year would include repealing Obama's signature health care program. Now, earlier, White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest had stated that the president would continue to use his executive powers regardless of Tuesday's GOP midterm sweep, including his power of the veto, while adding that President Obama would much prefer to work with Republicans than against them. President Obama is set to host the leadership of both political parties at the White House on Friday. The Islamic State group appears to be stalled in its military blitz through Syria and Iraq aimed at building a self-determined caliphate, the assault now closing in on its second full month. Observers say they're seeing a prolonged stalemate in Syria's Kobani, where IS militants have kept their control of the border town at 40% for the past several weeks. Nearly 600 IS fighters are estimated to have been killed as the extremist group struggles to produce new experienced fighters. Meanwhile, U.S. Central Command said it's launched airstrikes against 5 targets related to the al-Qaeda-linked Khorasan group in northwestern Syria, including vehicles and buildings near the Turkish border. 3 years after the shooting death of Osama bin Laden, a retired Navy SEAL has claimed he was the guy behind the barrel that took the fateful shot. 38-year-old Robert O'Neill told the Washington Post he fired 2 shots in the 2011 Special Ops raid that killed the leader in hiding, contradicting a previous testimony by teammate Matt Bissonnette, who wrote in a 2012 book that the designated point man took down the al-Qaeda leader. Both men are under fire for breaking Navy SEAL code for fame and financial gain. And the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Fatou Bensouda, has ruled out pursuing Israel over its raid of a Gaza-bound flotilla that had killed 9 Turkish activists back in 2010. She said that while there was a reasonable basis to suspect war crimes had been committed, it was not of sufficient gravity to be prioritized over the ICC's other larger cases. Lawyers for a probe said they would appeal the decision. Israel said the ICC had wasted time on a politically motivated complaint.
Well, today is Ipdong according to solar term, which marks the beginning of winter, and accordingly, the whole nation is having a chilly day today. So be sure to dress warmly, especially since we are only looking at highs in the mid-teens in many areas. And lots of sun will continue to dominate the nation, and a relatively high level of fine dust particles are being seen in some of the southern provinces. So please be aware of that. And here are the readings for today. The daytime high in the capital will top out at 15, while Daegu and Gwangju rise to 17, and Busan will be climbing into 18 this afternoon. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island and Daejeon will be getting up to 16 and 15, while Dokdo should see a high of 11. Well, a bit of cloudy days in store for Saturday, but it will turn sunny again on Sunday, and temperatures will remain on the cool side. That's all for now. Back to you guys in the studio.
Thank you very much, Jion, for the weather, as always. And those are stories we're following at this hour.
Have a great weekend. Mark and I will be back at the same time on Monday.